While Harvey does everything he can to get himself back from Mexico, enjoy one of your favorite episodes from Two Angry Men. It's got everything you want: Epstein Files, Donald Trump, and your hosts, Mark Geragos and Harvey Levin. Enjoy.
Mark, I'm told that a lawyer went into a civil courtroom and got a judge to remove the name of a man who allegedly went to Epstein's island, jet skied, and had sex with a 15-year-old girl. Welcome to the Two Angry Men podcast. Mark, the Epstein case. I am now ready to say something that I've been working on all week. But I think what people are looking for is not in the Justice Department files, and it is not in the grand jury transcripts. It is in civil cases that were filed against Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Do you agree?
Well, to a degree. I think that if you're going to find stuff, and it's interesting this week because Maureen Comey, who was the prosecutor of Maxwell and also of Diddy, was fired on Wednesday.
Right.
If you look at Radar Online, you know what Radar Online is? They're the faux TMZ competitor. I know you don't consider them a real competitor. I get it.
Okay, just make your point.
I will go there. They sued on what's called a Freedom of Information Act in the Southern District. Last year, June of 2024, there is a opinion written by a Southern District judge. There was a lot of litigation involved before that opinion was written, restricting what would be released about Epstein. And Harvey, you should link to that order because it's very interesting.
I've looked at this.
Okay, but what is the DOJ's involvement here? Guess what it is? Maureen Comey's declaration as to why things can't be revealed. That's in a civil FOIA action, along with a gentleman, I believe it's a gentleman named Seidel from the FBI.
Right.
If you read that 20 some odd page order, opinion, whatever you want to call it, that gives you kind of a roadmap as to what's happening here.
So why don't you summarize that, and then I want to tell you why I'm saying this about the civil cases.
Well, because this is also that FOIA request is a civil case. What is being invoked in that FOIA request is the specter of criminal investigation, the specter of if Maxwell's case gets reversed, the specter, all of that criminal stuff that is so often they invoke in civil cases. And if you take a look at that, and then I'm going to guess where you're going to go. You do your talking about your civil matters.
Well, let me just say that, we talked about this last week. I have two sources for sure, and possibly three, and I don't want to get into that, but definitely two, that have seen parts or all of the Justice Department file. There is no list of people that Jeffrey Epstein made. There is a file, and there are lots and lots and lots of names in it. And one of the names is Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is mentioned more than a few times, I am told. But I am told there's nothing untoward regarding Trump in that file. And as a matter of fact, that file, there is a lot less that the way it was put to me, that it was somebody said to me who has seen it, that if the whole thing gets released, it's going to be like Geraldo Rivera opening up Al Capone's vault. That's the way.
For those who don't remember, you want to recount what that was.
No,
there was
nothing inside. So that's what this person said. And, as for the grand jury testimony, it's very limited, and the lane is very narrow because it's about specific people and specific crimes. So it's very lasered in scope, and furthermore, the judge has redacted so much, or will redact so much, that it's not going to be particularly helpful. On the other hand, in discovery, in cases both involving Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. In the civil cases, there was information. I am told that there, and I don't know who this person is. The way it was put to me, and this is kind of harsh, it was a nobody, just meaning not a celebrity. And that's the I just want to be accurate the way they're describing it to me. And somebody who went to Jeffrey Epstein's island, somebody who did some really bad things. And the lawyer for this person went into the civil courtroom and convinced the judge that it shouldn't be released because it would be exposing the alleged victim. And the judge bought that and sealed it, and nobody has seen that since, except for somebody involved in the case. And I'm told there are two judges in particular who have sealed some information in civil cases which would, as it was put to me, be highly relevant to the public. So it seems to me there is something there, but I think it will be found not in the Justice Department file particularly, not in the grand jury transcript, but in the civil cases.
So this is what I think that there's truth in both of these, because if you take a look at, and the reason I come back to the FOIA request, clearly the DOJ, and back then it was Maureen Comey, the erstwhile prosecutor, is filing a declaration. She's asserting all kinds of privileges and privacy rights, but also that if Maxwell's case is reversed, that they doesn't want to prejudice a jury going forward, which, by the way, is I think the way to solve this is give Maxwell immunity immediately and let her testify.
Well, but by the way, I'm sorry for interrupting, but isn't it interesting that Ghislaine Maxwell is supposedly transporting people, which means there are presumably other perpetrators, but nobody's been prosecuted by her?
Well, you have to wonder she was acquitted, I believe, on a couple of the counts, or the judge threw out a couple of the counts. She's got a couple remaining. If this is, if it is a hoax, if it is ginned up, and by the way, for whatever you want to say, 2024, when all of this was done, Donald Trump was not the president. So you could make that, I can see how he makes that argument that it wasn't on his watch. But if that's the case, the easiest way to solve this, number one, is go back on that FOIA request and free up all the stuff on the FOIA request. If you say, and you have this justification, and I sent you, Harvey, the footnote of the opinion,
right,
because I really thought it was a stretch to say, oh, we're worried about the fair trial if her case gets reversed. She's done a substantial amount of time, not an insignificant amount of time. If it's in the public interest, then why not commute her sentence and let her speak freely, or bring her in front of Congress and the Oversight Committee, let her speak freely. I think the reason why is, and by the way, if you're...
Oh, no, finish Trump, the reason why. Finish your sentence.
Okay, if you believe that there's nothing there and it's a hoax, and it may be the case, because that's always been what Maxwell says, then let her testify. Give her immunity, or one of the fashions, or queen for a day, whatever you want to do, the various iterations, and let her tell her story and cross-examine her, and then let her waive the right to a supposed fair trial if she gets her case reversed, which is at this point like hitting a bank shot. That to me will speak volumes. Then you've got, as you said, the other civil cases where it's just worried about people's money. Now, there's always been the invocation of who is a victim. You don't want to expose a victim. The problem is, as I understand it, you tell me if this is what you've heard, that anybody can assert I'm a victim, and that means they get redacted. There is no gatekeeper for that.
I can give you an example. I mentioned the two civil cases where they did discovery, and a judge went in and got the judge to basically 86, his client's name.
Be careful, because 8647 is one
that's
where
true.
Comey's dad got
That's
in
true.
trouble. So, right.
I can tell you more specifically what was alleged here. That this guy went to Jeffrey Epstein's island with one of the girls. They were jet skiing, had sex. Again, this is a guy nobody's heard of. The judge redacted his name. His lawyer went to the judge, had a hearing, and the lawyer persuaded the judge the woman who was accusing him should be protected, and this was I believe a 15-year-old girl. But the judge decided to redact this person's name because of the age of the alleged victim in this case. So what all roads are leading back to are judges' decisions, Mark, that they are judges' decisions. So, everybody's saying, and I understand it, everybody's saying, well, release the Justice Department file. And now Trump is saying to Pam Bondi, release relevant parts, whatever that means, of the grand jury transcripts. And I don't think that's ever going to come out, or if it does, satisfy anybody, because then Pam Bondi has to decide what's relevant. And I don't think people trust her objectivity. So when you...
But, part of the problem is... So
but I'm just saying, it goes
Yeah.
back to these civil cases, and apparently there is smoke and even fire in some of the discovery that the judges put the kibosh on.
So there's a lot to unpack there. Number one, grand jury testimony is covered by Rule 6, the federal rules. The problem, and you hinted at this, maybe you actually said more than hinting at, grand jury testimony is not going to give you a whole lot. Usually in a grand jury, usually it's going to be some agent. He's going to talk in broad terms about, I talked to this person, I talked to that person. He's not going to give the kinds of details, the prurient details that people are asking for. So grand jury testimony is going to be a giant disappointment no matter what. Number two, the reason I come back to this opinion from about a year ago is because there is a very detailed declaration, both from Maureen and from the FBI. They have categories of documents. If you take a look at the opinion, they kind of list all of the various categories. They assert the various privileges as to that. If you wanted, and that's in a civil matter, if you wanted to show that all of this was much ado about nothing, it would seem to me that what you would say is, okay, it was a real stretch for us to have asserted the privilege at that point, given everything a year ago that was going on. But right now, the stretch is really to the point where it's the elasticity is broken, and you could waive the privilege there and reveal all of the FOIA documents. And there's tens of thousands of documents. And I'm not making that up. Read the opinion, which I'm sure you'll link in this podcast. If that's the case, that would quell most of this. It would either be something there or there wouldn't be something there. And
it's not going to quell what I'm talking about with the civil cases. It's not going to quell that at all.
I think that, there is a symbiotic relationship. You saw it with, by the way, with Diddy. You saw that the civil case was driving the criminal case, same prosecutor. So why wouldn't it have been the same thing with Maxwell? And why wouldn't all of the civil cases have been driving the criminal case in that as well? And if that's the case, you don't think that the prosecutors are getting the civil files? Well, I think the prosecutors have all of the civil files.
I am just told that the case that I mentioned to you about the man with a 15-year-old girl on Epstein's island who was jet skiing with her and had sex with her, allegedly, who got his name redacted out of that file because the lawyer convinced the judge to protect the alleged victim, that the U.S. attorney never saw it because it was eliminated from the file. This lawyer, what I'm told, went into court and made an argument, and the judge accepted it and eliminated, redacted it already from the file. So based on what I know, the feds do not have that information as an example in their file.
Let me tell you that to me strains credibility. And the reason why is the only way that somebody logically could make the argument that you have to redact the name of the so-called perpetrator to cover the victim is if there was some filing somewhere on behalf of the Jane Doe victim
I
against the perpetrator.
I understand that. And I know that is protocol. I am telling you, I have talked to somebody who was involved professionally in one of these cases. And the lawyer came in, and I cannot explain to you why it doesn't appear on a docket, or frankly, maybe it does, but it just doesn't. It's not like a smoking gun or with neon lights saying, look at me, but that somehow.
I don't, that makes I've got zero sense. Remember, the civil cases are, the ground zero of the civil cases is the Southern District of New York. That's where all of these cases are, and it's basically just a handful of judges. You've also got the prosecutor.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And you've got the prosecutor right there, same courthouse, in front of the same judges. But they're doing notice of related cases, meaning they're saying, hey, judge, we've got this action, it relates to this, and they're doing the low number and everything else. How in the world would all of this activity be happening and they're not going to know, the U.S. attorney is not going to know what's going on down the hall in the courthouse in the civil cases? They're monitoring all of that stuff.
They may be monitoring it, but look, Mark, I have not seen the Justice Department file. I'm just telling you what I've been told. And what I'm told is, at least as it relates to famous people, and I have heard nothing from either person that there's anything about these private people in there. There may be, I don't know. But as to the famous people, what's out is already out, and you're not going to see much more from that file. That's simply what I'm being told.
The only
they keep coming back to these civil cases and saying that what was redacted is what people really want to see. And I don't know that there are any famous people that have been redacted, but I'm told there are at least one person not famous who went to that island and did bad things.
So the only way that any of this makes sense is a very elaborate conspiracy theory, because you would have to believe a variety of scenarios. You would have to believe that somebody like Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, and Pam Bondi have seen these files, that there are smoking guns in there, and they've somehow have decided, no, we can't. And the smoking gun, God only knows what the smoking gun could be, but there is no way that we can let this out because it's such an explosive character.
Okay, stop for a second. This is what I absolutely do not understand. Dan Bongino and Kash Patel have said over a period of years that they believed that there was a lot here that was being hidden. And how could they just flip 180 like this? I know they're working for Trump and all, but Dan Bongino almost quit over the lack of transparency.
Is that true? Because there was the whole rumor was blah,
they got
blah,
in
blah.
a huge. They got in.
That's what everybody says.
Well, they did. They got in
confirmation?
Yes, they got in a big fight in the Oval Office. The nature of it is what's confusing me, because I don't think it's about Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and Pam Bondi all being on the same page when it comes to what's being released. What I was told was, at least as to Bongino, he didn't feel that enough was being released. So I don't think he's saying, oh, I've looked at it and I'm totally satisfied. No.
Well, look, you've heard the conspiracy theories. I've heard the conspiracy theories. You debunked
Conspiracy theory, by the way, makes it sound like it's flaky. I don't know this is flaky.
Well, no, you're the one who said.
I don't think this is flaky.
You have debunked the idea, at least from your sources, from somebody who's seen the file, that there's some smoking gun about Donald Trump, correct?
By two sources.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're comfortable saying that's not what this is about.
I'm saying I've talked to two credible people who say that it's not about anything Trump did. But I do think, and this is just pure speculation. I can't. I'm just thinking, why is Donald Trump acting this way? Why is he just, it's almost embarrassing to say, oh, the Epstein file is boring. Why are we still talking about Epstein? He's still talking about the 2020 election. So what do you mean? Why are we still talking about Epstein? It just doesn't make any sense. Why is he so determined not to let this out? Because remember, he didn't tell Pam Bondi, release the Justice Department file. He said, go to the grand jury transcript. So for some reason, he does not want this. The only thing I can think of is optics, that his name is in it a bunch, and just the name itself is going to create optical problems for him. And that's the only thing I can think of, and again, I trust the fact that I've cross-checked with two people that there's just nothing, there's no smoking gun in there with Trump. His name is there, but a lot of names are there. We mentioned last week, Fidel Castro's name is in there, I'm told. So it's not, he's among lots of company, but the only thing I can think of is he just hates the optics of this. And do you have any other theory?
Well, there are other theories. Number one, in support of him is that it was apparently in real time a known fact that there was a falling out between the two of them over a real estate deal.
Right.
Wasn't over, so you can say whatever, but that was actually something that I think is supportive of him. However, you know what's going to happen. You've got the circumstances of Epstein's death. You've got the fact that Bill Barr was AG at the time, and Bill Barr's dad was the one who hired him
at a prep school in New York.
Exactly. You also have the fact that people, whether you like it or not, because there is the suspicious death, because there was a lot of to-do, and now it's a hoax. There's everybody who believes that he was a asset for foreign intelligence. I mean, that is a very, very prevalent theory, even among people who aren't wearing tinfoil hats.
I've heard it. And, the other thing that I want to tell you what I've been doing today, because I've been spending a lot of time on this. So, I talked to somebody who interacted with Epstein. And this was more toward the 2005 period. And what they were saying was that, he was a weird guy. They always thought he was a weird guy, but apparently they thought he was brilliant when it came to money. And there were billionaires who were giving him power of attorney because they trusted him so much with their money. And so he did have that kind of pull over people. And and he was kind of a Svengali-like figure in that sense. And he also liked to hold things over people's head and brag about them and do all of those things. So Donald,
but what did he like to hold over people's heads?
I've not been able. Two people said to me that it was almost like he would blackmail them, and I don't know what that even means. That maybe they were exposed to things he did, and that was enough. I don't know. But the word was used more than once. And then they said, not really blackmail, but just holding over their head. So that's kind of the way it was put to me. So I don't know what people knew. They may not have participated, but I'm wondering what they knew, because I'm told by one person in particular today that this person said he was a weird guy. And that's all they would say. I'd like to get into this letter that Donald Trump allegedly wrote.
Right.
And
I want give the background.
Yeah, and then I want to tell you what I did with this today. So Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein had a 50th birthday party in 2003. And apparently, as part of the birthday celebration, his friends would write letters or do something that they could put in a book sort of 50th birthday book.
Memorabilia,
Yeah.
kind of a
Yeah.
party favor.
So Donald Trump, according to the Wall Street Journal, he wrote a letter to Epstein, and the letter included a drawing of a nude woman with his signature over her private parts, and then wrote a really creepy, eerie, even suspicious, kind of fictitious, kind of back and forth between Epstein and Trump himself.
Yeah, it said something about a secret or
that each day we hold a wonderful secret. So
Right.
what is this secret? And when you read the whole thing,
But wait, he has vehemently denied this.
he says
that
he
it's
never.
his.
He says he never wrote it. He also says he never drew anything, which is not true, by the way. We found 9 drawings of Donald Trump. So yes, he's drawn, and that's not true. But did he draw it?
Yeah, but he drew buildings. He wasn't drawing women that I'm aware of. Do you find silhouettes of mud flap girls drawn by him?
Mark, he didn't draw the Mona Lisa. You don't have to draw. You don't have to be that sophisticated.
I'm asking you.
You do not have to be that. I didn't see what he
mud
drew,
flap
so I don't know.
girls? Okay.
But here's the thing. I'm just going to tell you what I did today. So I was thinking that if he had all his.
By the way, did you ever think you were going to spend your day trying to find out the doodles of Donald Trump?
I even looked at the courtroom sketches in the E. Jean Carroll case to see if there were any pictures of him doodling, and I couldn't find it. But I do think he doodled during her testimony. So,
he was doodling opposing counsel who was not his type, famously.
Very good. Okay, so here's what I did today. I thought, if there is a book like that, and say there are, I don't know, 50 people who put a letter in or put some memorabilia in,
right?
That they may have had a party, and they may have taken the book and kind of put it on a pedestal.
On a pedestal, right? Like
where
you
people
do at
can look,
birthday
at
parties,
it, right? So then I thought maybe somebody who went to his birthday party saw this picture, which is a way of kind of validating this. And so,
yeah, but who are you going to get to admit at this point?
I'll tell you what I did.
Given the radioactivity,
I know,
of this.
I know. Well, I actually got a couple of people on the phone. I got nobody who went to the birthday party, but it was not for lack of trying.
Nobody who would admit going to the birthday party.
But it was not for lack of trying. And I thought maybe, and I still think, and maybe I'm stupid to talk about this right now, but that was kind of what I was thinking, is that if you make a book like that, and he loves being around celebrities so much, he probably had a 50th birthday. And if everybody did that, they would probably bring that book to the party. And so somebody has seen that book. And if that letter is in there, it would have been obvious enough and would have stood out enough that somebody might have remembered it. I have not been able to find that yet.
And did you talk to he would not reveal, or you wouldn't reveal your source, but my question is where is this supposed letter? And
I
what's
don't know
the provenance of it?
Well,
and
when
if
you
you've
read,
got somebody denying it in this AI generated milieu that we live in, well, how do you verify?
Oh, we got one
like
today. We got one over TMZ. Somebody sent us it's bogus, and we were able to figure out it was bogus based on the Wall Street Journal description. But people are already doing that. So when you read the Wall Street Journal story, it's really interesting because they quote Justice Department sources. So you think that was in the file. So look, I'm not saying everything I have here is ironclad, but I'm told it's not in the file.
And so, not to defend him, but Justice Department sources could be a disgruntled Department of Justice lawyer who got fired. So,
well, but how would
or quit?
Right, but how would that person, present or past, know about this if it were not in the file?
This is what I don't understand. I have defended enough federal criminal cases to know when they do a search warrant or they do an arrest, and they did a very public arrest of Jeffrey Epstein. They knew he was flying from France. They met him on the tarmac, if memory serves, at Teterboro. They arrested him. If you don't think they had already executed search warrants everywhere and had documents and books and notes.
Then
and
why
I mean,
why wouldn't this
they
be in
had
the file?
everything.
Then why wouldn't this be in the file?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If they're suggesting it's Department of Justice,
They said
employees,
sources. They said sources. They didn't say, yeah, they didn't say it's in the file. I mean, I'm dying to know this, and I'm just telling you what I've been told, and I haven't seen it for myself. You know, we're just doing reporting, and so this is as far as
so
I
if
can
you
go.
have to rank, if you have to rank your conspiracy theories, okay, let's rank the conspiracy theories. Foreign intelligence agent, Donald Trump incrimination, phony, democratically generated, phony hoax. Where do you rank these in terms of rank speculation?
Speculation. Oh, well,
Speculation.
I would
Informed. Look, you have a sixth sense. I'm going to give you a little credit here. You have a sixth sense over the years that's been developed as to what it really is accurate and what isn't. I mean, you have sometimes where you kind of walk off the line, but for the most part, you have a pretty good sense of what's true and what's a little wild and out there, because you have to, right?
Okay, well, here's my compass here.
Okay.
To me,
Harvey is North Star.
Well, no, here's what I'm thinking. That, you know, when Donald Trump was asked before he took office this time, when he was asked about the Epstein file, he was asked two questions before. Will you release the UFO, the government's UFO files? Answer, yes. Will you release the files on the Kennedy assassination? Answer, yes. Will you release the Epstein files? Pause. Well, yes. You know, you got to look at it to see that it's, and then he gives this kind of qualified answer. So even back then, it felt like a nervous response in the, you know, in the context of the, you know, what you will release, where the other two were instant and yes and unequivocal. And he was not unequivocal when it came to the Epstein file. So you could just feel and hear that it was different. And that's why I feel like at this point, and I can't tell you why Biden didn't. I mean, that may be a whole other issue.
By the way,
there may be a whole other set of issues with Biden. But
by the way, do you really believe that DOJ in 2024 in June and prior to that, why are they going to the extent of filing declarations both from the U.S. Attorney and from the FBI to not release freedom of information? If you think they're trying to preserve Maxwell's right to a fair trial,
that's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. That's the conspiracy theory that I don't buy.
Ridiculous. Yeah, that's ridiculous. Look, there could be lots of people from different camps who don't want this release for all sorts of reasons that vary. And it could be Democrats on one side, Republicans on another, Biden on one side, Trump on another. But for whatever reason, there has been no transparency in this case. And it feels like there's some reason the Biden administration didn't do it, and there's some reason the Trump administration isn't doing it. And the two are not aligned. So Jeffrey Epstein's net was wide enough that it seemed to cover both administrations. And there may be vastly different reasons why each of them wanted to keep this secret. But I think there's not much of a question at this point that Donald Trump doesn't want this out. And I think Donald Trump does not care about the people around him as much as he cares about himself. And I think that it may just be optics, and that may be enough. And I think that's why this letter has you know, just made him spin out of control, that, you know, is threatening to sue Rupert Murdoch and Fox News and all of that.
Yeah, but can you imagine
Wall Street Journal.
Can you imagine if the letter is phony, how pissed you'd be if
Of course.
you're him? I mean, you'd be out of your head.
You want to give a if you were at a racetrack, or if you're in Vegas and you had to bet on it, and somebody said you've got to bet, Mark, you betting real or phony?
Phony.
Really?
Yeah. There's something about it just doesn't resonate with me. I just the whole. I mean, the way it was reported and the whole thing does not ring of something that comes out of Donald Trump's creative stance. I mean, if you've read enough of his tweets, and which I have over the last 10 years, if you've seen enough of his interviews, if you've read, the Art of the Deal and things like that, nothing about that letter says, oh, there you go, that's a tell.
You just said
that just doesn't.
You inadvertently just said something that I think is really important. If you look at what he's done over the last 10 years, I would agree with you. But this is not over the last 10 years. Look at Donald Trump in the early 2000s when he was, married or single, kind of a playboy, and hanging with Epstein and kind of cavorting around. So, yes, I agree with you in the last 10 years, but we're not talking 10 years ago. And you know what a difference 10 years can make if you go back another 10.
But remember, there could be other motivations here. I mean, I hate to get into rank speculation, but I will rankly speculate. There are those who say Epstein had a prominent role in fixing him up with Melania. And that would have been what year?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I want to say like 2005, 6, something like that.
I think it was earlier.
Maybe it was.
That.
What? It was earlier than that. It was.
I think it was earlier than that.
Yeah.
For all you know, there is something embarrassing at the inception of the fix-up that has nothing to do with the Epstein Island underage or wild secrets or this or that.
Nobody's saying Epstein Island underage in this case.
Right. Well, everybody's saying that and saying that it's a blackmail operation and that's how.
No, I know, but we don't know if he did indeed write that. It doesn't necessarily mean Epstein's Island.
Well, look, everybody, the natural leap everybody is making when I say natural is what's the exact term? Because I want in this letter, whether it's phony or not, there is a reference to, what do they call it? Wonderful secret or something like that?
Wonderful secret.
Yeah. So, I mean, isn't that just a little contrived? I mean, doesn't that just not pass the kind of smell test, if you will?
The way Donald Trump speaks, that rings kind of true. I'm not saying
wonderful.
It's a
secret.
Wonderful
If
secret.
he had said it's a beautiful secret, I might be.
No. You see, you're looking at the big, beautiful bill, dude. I mean, I could hear Donald Trump saying something like that or writing something.
Our wonderful secret.
I know.
Okay.
Okay. So anyway, that's what I've been doing today. I've been on the hunt. I haven't come up.
Are we going to do a midweek if you actually find somebody who's going to? Because I haven't yet. You're on the hunt.
I've talked to people. You're right. Nobody is I didn't go to any party.
Exactly. At this point, who's going to raise their hand and say, yeah, I was there. It was great.
But I'll tell you.
It reminds me, the people who are going to say that are like people who are going to say, I was at a Diddy party.
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say that. Okay.
The way to solve this problem is commute Maxwell's sentence and let her talk.
She is the one. She is the one.
And by the way, if I'm Donald Trump, I would do that. You know why? Because she's maintained all along that this is all much ado about nothing and that there's nothing there. So what are you afraid of? If commuter sentence, let her do it. Let her talk.
That would be, at first I thought he could never dare do that. But if he said, look, in the interest of justice, I'm going to commute the sentence of the person who knows everything, and he does that, it would be interesting because the public, even though they may not want her to get out, they would want her to get out for that purpose.
Oh, that's really interesting. Her talking overrides all retribution, in my humble opinion.
Okay, well, I think you figured it out. We'll see you around.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, Harvey.